I think that I am getting more out of these podcasts than anybody. The people that I'm meeting and the stories that I'm hearing are changing my life, and I hope they're changing yours. Today's guest, I've been in tears since I started her book. It's amazing how someone else's story can touch you so deeply on so many levels and bring you such clearer understanding in how to help others and how to respond to huge, devastating things in their lives and in yours. Kimberly Stevens is amazing. You know my amazing. She has been in the business of keeping hope alive for herself and others for a long time, since like 26, I think. Her words, through grit and gratitude. Yes, 4 decades of grit and gratitude. I know there's many of you, many, 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 who haven't told your stories yet. I would recommend you picking up her book, Altar. It's available on Amazon in Kindle and in paperback. I think it's in hardback too. And diving into it, but make sure you've got your tissues beside you. I have mine. And if you ever thought you had a hard day, girl, well, perhaps you have. I don't want to put down or minimize anyone's hard times because I know it's so hard to get through. But Kimberly Stevens she started her grit and gratitude at age 10. And surprisingly enough, it was through swimming. Yes, swimming. So she vowed to win in swimming after a horrible event. Maybe she'll mention it. But it pushed her. She dived in, literally. Yeah. And she became a swimming All-American Big Ten record holder, national champion at University of Iowa Hall of Fame inductee. She's in the Hall of Fame in the University of Iowa. Oh, and she's got the wave, and she is amazing. Kimberly, formerly known as Kim, but she grew into the queenly name of Kimberly Stevens, had tragic loss. Tragic. After enduring the death of her son, life-threatening illness of her daughter, 2 divorces, a custody battle, breast cancer, foreclosure of her home, she's dedicated her life to helping people, spiritually and financially preparing them in case the big thing happens. So you can learn so much from her on like so many different levels. And I can keep on going on. She's got a BA from the University of Iowa and is currently licensed to sell health and life insurance in 23 states. So if it's not your state, we'll figure it out for you. Her award-winning agency, Kim Insurance, has been recognized as a top agency in Orlando, Florida. And I know Florida needs more help in that area these days. Her career in health insurance began after she spent 16 years in as a pharmaceutical sales representative and learned how to help patients find insurance. And maybe she can help you guys go through that whole Medicare thing, because that is another whole nightmare. Anyway, she is freaking amazing. And let's bring her on. When she's not working or swimming, she enjoys traveling with her now grown children, Tori and Daniel, and spending time with her cousins in Orlando or spending time in Naples, Florida with her mom. So she currently lives in Orlando, Florida, with 2 very spoiled little dogs. And welcome to the stage, Kimberly. Woohoo!
Yeah, thank you so much.
I am so honored to have you here, and I am so grateful to have had the opportunity to read your book. And wow. Oh, hi, Tom. Yes, she is freaking
Hi,
amazing.
Tom.
She is amazing. Tom was on last week, and I love all my guests. I have learned so much from them, but oh, thank you, Mary. And I appreciate you being on. It's nice to see you. How are you feeling? Hi, Mark. Celebrating your wife's birthday, Miss Gina. Say happy birthday to Miss Gina. Thank you, guys. That's amazing.
Happy birthday, Miss Gina.
Yes, love you, love you, love you, love you. I drop my glasses because I'm trying to, be cool. Oh, I am blown away about what you've gone through and how you've persevered and where you are now and how beautiful and queenly you look right in front of my eyes right now. Ah, I try to make my podcast a little different, like, not going like where you started but there's so many places my brain's like going "Da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da." And I wanna start, I think, with your firstborn son.
And I want to start by calling attention to the yellow roses that you have
Oh,
on your stage for me.
yes. She
And
planted these for her
it
her
was
son, Brendan, and she got her first rose on Mother's Day, and she got another rose on Father's Day and put it in the freezer for her husband so he could have one. It just seemed and I walked into the store, there was one rose bush.
there always is just one. And it's amazing how God always seems to bring them to me. And I am so touched by your thoughtfulness. Thank you.
As I am touched
So
by
we
your
should probably
story.
tell that story about the yellow roses.
Yes.
Um, so Cynthia mentioned that I had a son uh, first. He was born in 1991, and when he was born, he was perfect. He was due on Christmas Day, born on the 23rd, went home from the hospital in a giant Christmas stocking. And he went to the doctor when he was 6 days old, and he'd gained a little bit of weight, and everything seemed like it was on track and going really, really well. And then he started breathing funny and didn't nurse well. And so, to make the long story a little shorter, um,
You don't have to. Take
he
your time.
he essentially stopped breathing, and we rushed him into the hospital. I was doing mouth to mouth on him in the car to keep him breathing, and we got him in there, and they put him on life support. And a few hours later, they let us know that he probably had an infection and that we would know more in 24 hours. And so it seemed then that all we had to do was survive 24 hours. And 24 hours came and went, and there was no improvement and still no answers. And it was about 5 or 6 days into our hospital stay. It was New Year's Day, 1992. And we were told that our son was born with an extremely rare genetic disorder called citrullinemia. And essentially, he was born without an enzyme that allowed his body to process protein. And so his body was building up byproducts of protein. Um, and that looked like high ammonia levels, ammonia, the kind of stuff you clean your floor with. That was building up in his system. And those toxins cause first irritability, then lethargy, then coma. Brain damage is occurring while all of this happens. And eventually he died. He was 15 days old. And I don't even know if I have words to say what I felt at that time. I remember walking out of the hospital after he had died. We had been commuting back and forth to the hospital for about 10 days. And when I left the hospital that final time, I remember just feeling like my arms were just empty and heavy, but they didn't have the baby in them that was supposed to be there. And the other thing that I noticed was that it had been pouring rain in San Diego for the entire hospital stay. And it was gray and dreary and pouring rain. And right at that moment that I walked outside after Braden died, the clouds were rolling away, the sun was coming out, and the pavement was still wet, but starting to dry in little patches. And I remember thinking very clearly that God must have been crying with me while Braden was in the hospital, and that his tears had stopped now because he had taken my son home and my son was finally at peace. And the yellow rose story fits into this story in that when Braden was born, I was given yellow roses, and they kind of became my connection to him and to that time. And so, about a month after he passed away, I planted a yellow rose bush in my yard as a memory and nurtured that yellow rose bush and really hoped that I would get a lot of flowers. And I didn't. It was more like Charlie Brown's rose bush than it was like the Florida or the Floribunda roses that I had seen the summer before in France and fallen in love with. And so I didn't get any roses. And there was one bud on that rose bush in early May. And Cynthia is right. It bloomed, the very first rose bloomed on Mother's Day. And that was a day when I was really struggling with my identity. Was I a mom? Of course I was. I had given birth and I'd had a son and he was here and he was real, but he wasn't here any longer. And struggling with my identity it was really difficult. I know this sounds really stupid, but in church on Mother's Day, they have the mothers stand up and be recognized. And I really agonized over whether or not I should stand up on Mother's Day. And I did stand up, and God did give me a yellow rose on that day. And in that gift of that rose, I really felt like God was saying, Kimberly, you are a mother, and I'm taking care of your son now. And I care about this detail of your life. And the second rose came on Father's Day, one night before. I put it in the fridge, saved it for Braden's dad. And we both wept when he saw that second yellow rose. And throughout time, the yellow rose has become something really special to me in that somehow, some way, God always finds a way to bring a yellow rose in my life to show me that he cares about the details and the things that I'm going through. So thank you, Cynthia, for having that detail here.
You're so welcome. You're so welcome. My Tom says, God's manifestations of love and caring, he leaves signs of his love. And your book hit me. And I was like, whoa. I have to, and I had to get you a yellow rose.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. But for our listeners, it's profound, and her life is profound, and gratitude and grit personifies Miss Kimberly. And so we're going to backtrack for a second to her swimming days at age 10, when she learned how to get that grit and gratitude through hard work, perseverance, and pushing through when she didn't want to. So here she was in the swimming pool, swimming. She did her thing, and in the car, and it wasn't that
pretty. So
it wasn't that pretty.
It was not pretty. So it was my first meet. It was a B meet. So if you know what a B movie is, you know what a B meet is. It's not an A meet. And the meet prize for each event were these giant rosette ribbons. They were as big as my head, but I was 10, so they probably weren't this big. But at the time, they were amazing. And I really wanted to win one. And at the end of the weekend, I had swum, I don't know, probably 10 events. And there was a pile of kids in the back of my mom's station wagon. This was the 70s. And everybody was smiling and happy and showing off their ribbons, except for one kid in that car. And I was that kid. And I was crying because I was the only kid that didn't win a ribbon in that car ride. And so I decided I would quit swimming. And that would be that, because I didn't like losing and I didn't like being the only kid who didn't win something. And so I told my parents that I was quitting. And they said, no, no, you're not. So I decided if they wouldn't let me quit, that I would figure out how to win. So that's what I did.
Of course you did. And when she did, ladies and gentlemen, when she did. If you don't know the story of Kimberly or haven't seen her yet, listen to this. So she swam through high school and became All-American.
An All-American.
Yes. And you have to win like 10 things, like big time. You got to be like first. Like, this is like huge stuff, guys.
State champion. Yes. There was another story similar to this one in swimming, and I don't have this in my book. And I haven't shared it with many people, but I think it is actually a moment in time that I remember because I've had to go back to it a lot of times during times of defeat in my life, and remember that I was able to get back up on the starting blocks after extreme failure. And so when I was in high school, I was an All-American. I was seated first in state meet in 2 events. My team was expected to win the entire state meet championship, and it was a really big deal. I was a senior. I was barely 17, and it was November. And they blew the whistle for the 50 free. Now, mind you, I was seated first. And so the whistle blew. I took my cue, stepped up on the blocks. The starter said, "Take your mark." And I dove before the gun went off. And in those days, it was okay. You could have one false start. So we all were called back to the blocks. I swam to the wall, got out, stood behind the blocks. The starter blew the whistle. I stepped up to the blocks. "Take your mark." And I dove before the gun went off. I was disqualified. And I came up from my dive, and I knew that I had false started. And I couldn't see because tears and the heat from humiliation were just fogging up my goggles. And I knew at that moment that I had not only let myself down, my teammates, my coach, my parents, everyone. My team wasn't winning state now that year. I certainly wasn't winning the 50 free. And there were college coaches in the audience there to watch me. And I had just foiled my future. And I swam to the wall. I got out. I looked for a really quick exit. I thought about actually running outside of the actual pool, like into the parking lot, but I didn't have a towel and it was November. So I ran into the locker room and I was already sobbing. I didn't turn around. I didn't watch the race that I should have watched, that I should have won, actually. Mm-hmm. And I just went in the locker room and started sobbing. And thankfully, my coach came in the locker room and brought me a towel. And I just looked at her and I said, "I'm staying in this locker room for the rest of my life. I cannot face anybody out of this locker room." I just was a complete and utter failure. And I wish I knew word for word, verbatim, what my coach had said to me, because I would write it down and put it on my wall everywhere around my house. But essentially, she told me I had to forget what happened in the 50 free. And I had to get up on those blocks again and swim the 100 free just a few minutes later, actually. And that despite my failure, she said she still believed in me. And at
Good
that
choice.
point, yes, very good. And at that point, I wasn't sure that I believed in myself. And I wasn't sure that I could face all the people that I had failed and let down. And she left me in the locker room to make the decision. And I remember very clearly deciding that I would step out of the locker room and that I would swim my 100 free, even though I was terrified. And I decided that I would take her belief in me and apply it to myself and turn it into a little bit of belief in myself. Yes, I am a freestyler. I did 100 and 200 in college.
Thank you, Grace.
And
Great question.
so I stepped up out of the locker room, I should say, and I was standing behind the blocks just saying, don't false start, don't false start, don't false start, don't false start, don't false start.
Whew.
And the whistle blew. I stepped up, take your mark, and I dove after the gun. And I want to say that I won the 100 free that day. And I want to say that my team actually won the state championship. But I got second. I had a slow start. Imagine that. And my team got
You were
second.
there. You did it.
I did it. Later, I was told by the coach at Iowa, as I asked him a couple of years later, like, why did you even, stick around and even have any interest in, recruiting me? And he said that it was because I was able to come back from that failure so soon. And mind you, the 50 free happens, then there's diving, and then there is the 100 free. And diving at state meet is done at a different time. So there was just like a 15-minute break for diving. So I had 50 free, 15 minutes, and step up for the 100. And so there wasn't a lot of time. That might have been good, actually. There wasn't a lot of time for me to get in my head. But he actually said, this coach, that Jim Richardson, if you're listening, Jim, I know sometimes he sees me on Facebook. Thank you, because he actually is the person who planted in my mind that I could come back from adversity because of what he saw in my 100 free at my state meet senior year in high school. And that theme, those words, his words, have carried me through a lot of adversity as I've grown older.
Whew. An adversity you've had, and angels have been there to help you.
Amen.
Yes. Yes. Grace is one of my angels right now, and she's a swimmer, and she's 92.
Wow.
Yeah, she's amazing. She's a poet. She still works. She's phenomenal. She's got like 27, 28 books. So, we got lots to keep up with her.
Oh my gosh. That's
Yeah.
amazing.
And when it's
That's amazing. That's your word.
you won the biggest award in life, getting up from the previous defeats, which are reality, are wins. When we have the courage to do it again, you are a winner. She is such a winner. Like, oh my gosh, she just keeps getting up. And the things that would devastate or make her not be around, she has risen from, and risen and risen and risen. And it has not been easy. And I am in awe of this woman. She is amazing. She is amazing.
Thank you, Tom.
Yes. You are amazing. You are amazing. I am amazing. We are amazing. So then you didn't go to law school, much to your father's chagrin.
I did swim masters. Yes, I was a masters national champion in several events in 2009 and 2011. And that's also a comeback story because I went through a double mastectomy and reconstruction in 2010.
Just
So
go.
getting back in the pool was.
Can you believe this woman? Yeah. Where do you want to go to next? I think we got a swimmer here, so maybe you should go into swimming stories and go through your wins and then keep it positive and up.
So swimming really saved my life. And everything that I learned in the pool is a life lesson. Nothing is easy in the pool. There's resistance in everything that we do. And swimming is about technique and strength and drive, mindset. And to be able to do the repetitions daily, more than daily, we had 2 workouts a day for most of my life. And to be able to continue to show up and train and push myself to be better than I was earlier, and to be constantly improving is a lesson from the pool that I keep with me always. Without swimming, I would not have learned that. And so I really can say without swimming, I wouldn't be here because I would not have survived the other moments in my life.
Mm. Mm.
So Grace, yes, I did swim masters, not by choice at first. So when I finished college, I had, thank you, you're my favorite. When I finished college, I was done swimming forever. And I didn't swim for 20 years. I had set Big Ten records and won a national championship, and I was All American in college. But I was done. I was done swimming. And so I still worked out. I went to the gym. Back in those days, aerobics were big. I'm almost embarrassed to say that. But
It's
those
okay.
were the types of things that I wanted to be. And it wasn't until my late 30s, early 40s that a friend of mine was doing triathlons. And I had already purchased a road bike and I was road biking for fun, not racing. And she wanted to do triathlons. And so she was a runner and she purchased a bike. And so together we decided we were going to do this sprint triathlon, which meant I had to get back in the pool. And I remember the day that I showed up at the pool after 20 years. And in my head, I was standing at the side of the pool. And in my head, I'm like, oh, I'll get to dive in. I'll swim 800 to warm up. And then I'll do, this and that. And so I had no idea that after 20 years, my arms wouldn't move the same. And I dove in the water. I think I swam about 3 laps and it was painful. And I couldn't figure out why I was struggling so badly. And I thought, well, duh, you haven't been in the pool for 20 years. This is not something that you were born with. I had to work and retrain my muscles and my stamina and my cardio. And so I eventually worked it up to swimming enough to train. And yes, I totally agree, Tom. Life lessons are won in competitive sports or learned in competitive sports for sure. Survival is learned in competitive sports. And so I had it worked up. I was training. I did this triathlon and I qualified to compete elite. And I thought that was really pretty cool.
Very cool.
And so I decided that I would do that. And so even though the first one was a sprint, I was going to do a longer distance the next time. And I started training and I tore my meniscus.
Oh,
So running became a chore. I had meniscus surgery and then I did all the rehab, all the therapy, and literally was cleared on a Thursday morning. Went to the Bahamas with my kids on Thursday afternoon, and we were at the water park. And I slipped on the ladder and I tore my other meniscus.
oh no.
And so I did all that rehab and um, got back to running and training again. And I tore my first one a second time. So 3 meniscus tears in the matter of, I don't know, a year and a half or 2 years. So I think God was telling me I wasn't meant to be a runner,
I guess so.
possibly.
Uh,
Third time's a charm. So I decided that I would swim and bike. Well, there aren't very many races or competitions. They call them, I think they call them aquathons, which is just biking and running, or biking and swimming, no running. And I really couldn't find any races. So I decided that I would, Dan Altmeyer is the rehab expert. Yeah, shoulder, elbow, back, knees, all of it.
I
So
can
I
see
decided that I would swim some open water races.
Hmm.
And open water seemed like it wasn't the pool, so it was okay. I could do that. Well, I got really obsessed with open water swimming, and I swam Big Shoulders, which is a race in Chicago. So I did a couple 5Ks in Chicago. And then I got this idea that I needed to swim Alcatraz.
Oh.
So I signed up for that race and I trained for that for about 6 months. And I actually showed up and swam Alcatraz.
Whew.
And I actually won that race. I was the first
Hi.
woman, 10th overall. And that
Wow.
was another lesson in conquering fear. Because when you get on a boat with 2,000 swimmers and you're going out to this eerie island that no one has ever escaped from, quote unquote, and the swells are 7 to 9 feet and the water's 54 degrees and black, and the fog prevents you from seeing the beach to which you're swimming, it's a little scary. And when I signed up for that race, I remember thinking, oh, that's so cool. And I was really excited about the possibility of there being swells, because lake swimming, there's not a lot of swells. There's some, but nothing like the San Francisco Bay.
Hmm.
I did swim the Alcatraz race, and the current was crazy. They have you aim far to the left of the beach. I think it's actually east, but don't quote me on that. So you aim over here so that the current will push you to land over there by the time your swim is complete. They actually told us in the race briefing that if we aimed for the beach where we wanted to end up, that likely we would be swept under the Golden Gate Bridge and lost at sea.
Ugh.
And so it was a really scary morning. And all the things that had attracted me to the race, like the adrenaline junkie rush, right?
Right.
All of that just terrified me that morning. And I remember very clearly when I was on the boat going out to the island, thinking that I didn't really want to win anymore. I just wanted to survive. I did wear a wetsuit. Yes. Yes. The
Rescue.
water was 54 degrees. And when while we were on the boat riding out to Alcatraz Island, I said, I don't care if I win anymore. I just want to make it back to the beach. And so the Cal Berkeley men's swim team was on my boat. And I made this decision while I was on the boat that I was just going to be safe. So I was going to just follow the Cal Berkeley men's team and everything would be fine and I would survive and I could say I swam Alcatraz. And so 10 minutes before the race, the boat got to the island and swimmers started jumping into the water. And it was about a 15-foot drop from the boat to the water. And I just kind of watched people, and I knew I could not get in that water immediately because sitting in 54-degree water, I would have become hypothermic.
Mhm.
So I waited. I was the last swimmer off the boat and grabbed my goggles, jumped in the water, and the cold just took my breath away. And it took a good minute before I had enough wherewithal mentally to figure out where I was. In open water, I always swim to the front of the starting pack just so I don't have to swim over slower swimmers and I don't get my goggles kicked off
Smart.
as all the swimmers are separating. And so I got to the front of the line, I pushed my goggles on, and the buzzer went off, and we were off. And in open water, I always sprint for about 200 yards just to get away from all the swimmers. That way, again, I don't get kicked and I don't lose my goggles. And so I sprinted. I think I was extra scared, extra adrenaline that morning because when it was time to settle into my pace and find the Cal Berkeley men's team, I couldn't find them. There were no swimmers around me. And I just got chills. I started panicking and I got to the top of a swell and I started looking around. I couldn't find the building that I was supposed to use to sight because there was too much fog. And all I could see was the sight boat pulling this large orange buoy. And we were told in the briefing, when in doubt, follow the orange buoy. That will get you to shore. And I saw that orange buoy and I was like, I guess that's what I have to do. I'm gonna have to follow the orange buoy. And as I was thinking that, I sunk to the bottom of the swells. So I was in a valley of black water and I couldn't see anything. And I remember thinking, okay, that's it. Swim or die. And I decided to swim. I got back to the top of the swell. I found the orange buoy. I put my head down and I swam. And it was literally a survival moment. And about 25 minutes later, the water started getting warmer and shallower. And I stood up to run through the finish chute. And all these people were yelling and screaming at me. And I had water in my ears and I had no idea what they were screaming. And all of a sudden, the water cleared and I could hear them. They were yelling, "First woman!" And I remember thinking, I'm just
Ah,
grateful that I finished.
congratulations. Wow. Wow. I think all of us were all right there with you, especially Grace, our swimmer that I know of so far. Wow.
Yeah, that was a crazy swim. Grace, you'll love this. So my time was 30 minutes and 1 second. And I thought that morning that I was going to have to go back and do the race again to break 30 minutes. And then a couple days went by and I thought, no way. I'm absolutely not that crazy. I'm sticking with my 30 minutes and 1 second. So
That's
that's what a swimmer
amazing.
does.
That's what a swimmer does, and that's what we have to do in our lives, just keep swimming. And if it's terrible, keep your eye on the buoy or the prize or what you want in your
Right?
life and keep on swimming for it no matter what.
Right? Another just wild lesson so clearly demonstrated through a swim race.
Wow. And almost all of your lessons have brought those kind of metaphors to you.
Yes. Yes. So another story about swimming, since we're talking about swimming today. Um, so in 2009, after I swam Alcatraz, my open water swimming kind of morphed back into pool swimming. And oh yes, 1/10 of a second, 1/100th. Yes, I've missed cuts to qualify for meets by 100th of a second before. Only once though.
Because you
Crazy.
figured it out. Because you figure it out.
Yeah. Grow your fingernails longer, whatever it takes. Uh,
Huh, I believe it.
so, so 2009, I found myself swimming, pool swimming, because the masters team was a lot of fun and they wanted points. They wanted to actually win the state meet. And at state meet, or at the state meet, all the teams then combine in the state of Illinois and then go on to swim in Masters Nationals as one team. So it's Team Illinois. So I swam state meet. I wasn't going to nationals. And then all these teammates, like the entire state, people that I had swum with my entire life, were going to nationals. So I decided to go to nationals.
Of course you did.
And yeah. So I got up there for my first pool, like real race, right? In a real pool that I actually cared about. And I was wearing one of those fast suits. And I started doing my warm up beforehand. And I went and I sat behind the blocks. And there was still about 20 minutes before it was my turn to swim. But that's sort of how I get in my zone. I just sit behind the blocks and watch the swimmers before me. And I got up and I started moving around and I bent down and my fast suit split right in the behind.
Oh,
And now these suits were like wetsuits back in the day. They were only allowed for 1 year, and then they disallowed all the records that were set while we wore those suits because there was, something unfair about wearing those suits. But if you can picture trying to stuff your body, it was like stuffing a sausage, trying to stuff your body into these suits. Well, and mine tore, and there was no way I was going to do a start from a starting block with my behind wide open. So I ran into the locker room and ran up to the Blue 70 sales booth and I said, my suit ripped and I'm swimming in 5 minutes. So they gave me another suit and I ran into the locker room and pulling and groaning and trying to get this thing on. And I got it on. I got out to the blocks. And I was sitting behind the blocks and there was one heat to go. And so it was my turn. I stepped to behind the blocks, put my goggles on, and my goggles snapped, broke.
Oh.
And I was always taught take 2 pairs behind the blocks. So I had my second pair, dipped it in the pool really quick, got them on, got up on the blocks, suit didn't rip, swam my 200 free. I should have won it. I was actually going for a national record and I got second. So that was the beginning of my nationals meet, but I did have several more events that I did win. The 400 free, the 800 free, the 100 free. So it ended up being an amazing meet and it kind of got me excited about swimming in the pool again and competing. And my times ended up ranking me very high worldwide. And so I decided that my next goal was to go to Worlds in 2010. And I set my sights on winning a world championship. And that was August of 2009. On March 5th of 2010, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. And so that changed my perspective on 2010 and what I was doing in 2010. And So I decided that I would go to Worlds in one of the following years. And so my race in 2010 was to stay alive. And I ended up having a failed lumpectomy. They didn't get clean margins. And so later I went back and had a double mastectomy and reconstruction. And while I was healing, I sat by the pool. It was the summer, and I was watching swimmers. And so once I was cleared to go back in the water, I wasn't really able or allowed, quote unquote, to swim, to really swim, because I ran the risk of lymphedema, which is a swelling that is caused by having lymph nodes removed and having major surgery. And so they really cautioned against strenuous activity. So I started swimming in late July that summer, and I had to start with 1 lap of the pool. And then every day I added 1 lap. And so I built it up very, very slowly. And by the end of October, I was actually swimming all right. I had expanders and I hadn't had my full reconstruction done. And they were actually very painful to swim with. But I was determined that I was going to continue to swim. And so about 10 surgeries later, we get to 2011. And each time that I had a major surgery in there, I would have to start over with 1 lap and then build it back up. And so summer of 2011, it was June and it was Father's Day. And I remember thinking, could I be ready to go to nationals in August? And really the answer is no. There was no way I was going to be, in as tip-top shape as I wanted to be. But I decided that I was going to go for it anyway. And so August of 2011, I got back up on the blocks. And my first event was the 800 free. And Rowdy Gaines was the announcer. And so I'm standing behind the blocks and he announced my name. And as I stood up, he's like, and she's the 2009 national champion. And her time was blank, blank, blank in the world. And, right. And I'm going, no pressure. And so I swam. I guess what place I got? Second.
That's still amazing. I mean,
it's just funny, right? It's just funny. My time was about a minute slower than it had been in 2009.
what year
But
is this now?
the
What year are we in?
it was 2011. So I had taken 2010 off for all the surgeries and recovery. And the best part of that swim was not second place. It was not my time. It was that during that race, my friend had said something to Rowdy about my battle in 2010. And so when I finished the race, though I was second, I got a standing ovation, and every swimmer from the deck just came over and high-fived me. And I knew that they were cheering for me because I was alive and I had survived, not because I was this great swimmer. Or it was the most amazing victory of my life. Celebrating living with them.
Gratitude and grit.
Mm-hmm.
Ah,
That one was I want to say it was in Alabama. It was 2011. I'll have to look it up. Not Florida. No, the 2 nationals that I swam in were in Indy in 2009 and maybe it was Arkansas. No, I think it was Alabama. I'm pretty sure it was Alabama for 2011. I'll have to go look at the medals.
woohoo! Is it close by? Not so much. You'll let us
No.
know. You'll give it to us. Eric will put it in the note afterwards when we send out the replay and the notes to thank you for
Perfect.
attending, because who knew we had so many swimmers? And wow, it's amazing. And thank goodness you had this to keep your soul fired up and go for it and show your grit and keep going through it, because that's just
Absolutely.
the fire in your belly that kept you as gorgeous and beautiful as you are right now in front of us all. Showing
Thank
that, wow, woman can do it all, even though we don't want to, even though sometimes we're crying our hearts out. And gosh. So
Swimming has
you
saved
want to
my
talk
life
about the wave now,
many
or do you
times.
want to go back to kids?
Oh, let's talk about the wave.
Let's talk about the wave.
So I can
Yeah, this
weave
is
a little
amazing.
bit I can weave a little bit of my kid's story into that.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah. So talking about the wave, the University of Iowa has this amazing tradition, and it is at the end of the first quarter of every home football game. They stop and they turn and they wave to the children and families who are in the children's hospital. And the hospital is built to overlook the stadium at the University of Iowa, and it's just amazing. They call it the press box, um, but it is one of the just most heartwarming traditions in college football. Well, it's one of the most heartwarming traditions ever. And to be in that stadium when it happens is to just, oh my gosh, I have chills again, is
Oh,
to
good.
just feel this energy and these amazing good wishes that are just being sent to the children and their families in the hospital. And the only way to make something great better is to share it. And so that is what I did in November of last year. And the story starts with going back to my son that we started with at the beginning of this um, discussion. And we spent considerable time in the hospital with him. But what I didn't share is that 2 years later, my daughter was born and was diagnosed with the same disease. And I was told she wouldn't live a week. We spent 4 years in the hospital together, in and out in crises. Um, and it was a miracle that she even survived to be 4 years old. When she was 4, she was healed by a liver transplant. And she is now 30 and she has a job. She's a homeowner. She has 2 dogs. She's married. She's just
Woohoo!
normal. And she's just an absolute miracle. Her name is Victoria Faith, and she has lived up to every letter of her name. She is my heart's delight. And I also have another son, Daniel,
Yes.
who's 28, and he's also amazing and my heart's delight.
Mhm.
This past fall in November, Tori, my daughter, was turning 30, and I wanted to do something to show gratitude for her 30th birthday, because every year she lives as a miracle, but 30 just seemed like, wow, I can't believe we got there. And she has many more years in her, I know. And so I got this idea in July that, wow, what if we extend the Hawkeye wave? And the reason why I loved that so much is because, one, I absolutely love the University of Iowa. My heart and blood is black and gold. And I love that they do this wave. The wave is extremely special and meaningful to me because I know that if we had had that when
Mm.
Tori was in the hospital, that it would have given us a break in the monotony of 4 years in life-threatening crisis. And so the wave is just something amazing to me. And so what we did is we created this movement called Extend the Wave. And we took the wave from Iowa City and we brought it to Orlando, Florida. And that looked like 1 week where we had a bunch of volunteers and we took gifts to the hospital, and we went into every room where people would receive us and brought them gifts. We took gifts on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And each day that we brought gifts to the children and families, we invited them to a tailgate lunch on Saturday, which was in the family lounge, and to watch the football game and see the wave. And it seemed like something really small, to just have people come to a lunch and watch a football game. But it ended up being so special because it did exactly what I hoped it would do, is that when we talked to people on Monday, we would say, I hope you're not going to be here on Saturday, but if you are, we're going to have a tailgate lunch and we're going to watch the Iowa wave. Have you ever seen the wave? People would be like, some people had heard of it, but most people hadn't. And so it gave them something to look up, research, find out what it was, and anticipate. And so on Friday, we took T-shirts to all the kids and their parents, and we invited them to wear their T-shirts. And on Saturday, they did not know this, but I worked very, very hard on Friday with Fox Sports and the hospital and getting releases and all of that. And we got a little tiny video clip of our kids in Orlando. And so on Saturday, people came to the tailgate lunch and they hung out. We had comfort dogs, golden retriever dogs, delivering gifts all over the hospital that day. And people came and they hung out in the parent and family lounge. And when the football game happened, the wave happened at the end of first quarter, and Fox Sports did a shout out and said, and this year, or this game, the wave is being extended to children and families at Orlando, Florida. And they showed a clip of our kids.
Oh,
And if you go to extendthewave.org, you'll see the video of the wave where our kids were shown and they did the shout out to our kids. And so we reached about 100 families that week. And it was just an idea to say thank you to God for my 30 years with my daughter. And it has turned into this, it's just turned into this amazing movement. And I'm just about ready to reconvene a real board, because this last year it was me. And we're about to have our first meeting. And yes, thank you.
Thank you, Erin.
And I am told by the people who are interested that this year we're pushing to do 10 cities and 1,000 families.
Yeah, you go, girl. Woo! Awesome. Now that's amazing.
It's really cool. That is amazing. And it was just born out of a little bit of gratitude, and it touched a lot of lives. And I'm so excited to see where this wave is going to keep going.
Take your wave everywhere you want in the entire world. Look what you can do with a little bit of gratitude. Kimberly,
Absolutely.
amazing. Her book is on Amazon. Alter. And do you want to explain your title?
Yes. So the title, let me see if it's backwards. So this is the book, Altered, and the subtitle is Finding Hope Through Grit and Gratitude to Never Give Up. I put the altar in all caps because the altar is about God. And I put the apostrophe D in lowercase because that's about me. So it's called Altered. It means changed by God, and finding hope through grit and gratitude to never give up. And that was the message of Extend the Wave, by the way, is our T-shirts and our logos said, Extend the Wave, And it had a big hand reaching from one stadium to another stadium.
Oh,
And then the in big letters, it just says never give up. And so that was our message to the children and families. Never, never, never give up.
and that applies to all of us in all walks of life. Plus, the book has chapters of the Bible in it and good verses to read to lift you up on each of the chapters, and music for your music playlist for each one of the chapters.
Yep. And
it's phenomenal.
I do have that playlist on Spotify. So if you're not a reader and you want some music that will bring hope into your life, my website, you can subscribe to the playlist.
There you go. Is it on www.kimberlyjstevens.com?
Yes.
There you go. So you can all apply and follow Kimberly because she is amazing. 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 Oh, Tom must have read it. He has an amazing book on there. Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Tom. And I know, Eric Flanor, you're always looking for new material for your daily talks. You might want to go in there and pull out some of Kimberly's thoughts and choices because they are really, really heart-moving and they will lift you up. And we all need to be lifted up sometimes to get to your greater good. And when you're in the middle of that swell on the bottom and looking up, looking for your orange buoy, pray, go for it, and keep on going. And go faster through the hard parts. And we're going to end with our little quote because we go, you are amazing. I am amazing. We are amazing. We thank you all for being with us. Pick up Kimberly's book. It is amazing. She is amazing. And I can't wait to see her again and give her a big hug in person. Thank you. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you, Cynthia.
Woo!